Your money can be up one day and the next day it can totally free fall. Recessions are inevitable, but how you're able to manage the money and how you're able to manage the volatility and the free fall of your money is totally up to you. I'm going to be showing you guys how you can protect yourself in recessions so that you can come back a lot stronger than you did going into the recession. You see, recessions, guys, is just a setback. But how you react to the recessions can make all the difference in the world. So I'm going to be walking you through some strategies that you can take to protect your portfolio from having a lot of losses in recession times. But first, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Leon Mann. I'm a licensed wealth consultant with Money Assist Financial. And what I do, I help hardworking folks such as you, add an additional multiple 6 to 7 figures to your retirement portfolio. I'm able to do this by providing a free, no obligation financial analysis. By doing the financial analysis, you will be able to see where you currently are and where you need to go to design the lifestyle of your choice. It is the only way to get from where you currently are to where you would like to end up. Now, what is one way that you can recession proof your investments? One important way that I usually think it is very important to recession proof your finances is through diversification. Diversification includes balancing your investments. And equities, for example, behave differently. You can have commodities that perform very well. They would usually go up in recession times, while other investments, they would perform poorly. So you want to spread out your investments across the different asset classes. For example, if you have stocks, if you have bonds, if you have commodities, you want to spread them out so that when your investments start to fall, you're able to basically have a little bit of a parachute so you can't totally free fall. And speaking of defensive ways to diversify your investments, you want to spread your investment portfolio across different industries. For example, you have industries like healthcare, industries like consumer staples, industries like utilities. You're always going to need healthcare, you're always going to need utilities, even in recessions. So this is one way that you can at least have defense. Remember, in anything, you can't just have offense. You're going to need a certain amount of defense. And this is where defensive investments will come into play. For example, stocks in healthcare, you're always going to need that. You're always going to need things like consumer staples. You're always going to need things like finance and banking. So it is critical to protect your investments with a little bit of a defensive stance so that you can't totally lose everything. And you have to spread your investments out across the various asset classes. So in case one asset class really falls, you have the other asset classes like commodities that would really pick up your investments, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is to choose quality investments. I usually prefer quality over quantity in terms of investments. You want to choose investments that look good financially on the financial books. For example, look at their balance sheets. Their balance sheets should be very good. They should have little debt. Most importantly, they should have consistent cash flow. If you choose investments that are good on the books, they would usually be able to at least weather the storm. They'll be able to adapt more. They can pay off their debts a lot faster during bad economic times. When it comes to income-proof investments, or when it comes to income investments, you want to have things like government bonds. You want to have things like corporate bonds. These offer you consistent returns. And while their returns may not be very high, as opposed to equities, what these usually would do, they would usually preserve your portfolio so that you can't totally free fall, right? Instead of free falling, they keep your portfolio consistent during recession. So it's always important to think about quality investments. The third thing is to have liquidity. You want to have cash on hand during recession periods. Sure, you may not notice cash when the economy is doing very well, but you're going to need cash when the economy is doing poorly. Part of the reason for this is that with cash, you're not going to be forced. You're not going to be forced to sell some of the assets, for example. And when you sell your assets, you're going to be at a loss. So you don't want to sell your assets. You want to keep the cash handy so that you can fulfill short-term needs. And another thing that I would usually prefer is to buy more. Remember, in a recession, it is an entry point to purchasing more investments. With cash on hand, it's like an opportunity so that you have investments on sale, you can purchase more. Your eyes should basically light up every time there is a recession, right? It's your opportunity to purchase more. The fourth thing is to be able to manage risk as much as you're able to manage returns. Investments, they're not all about returns. You want to be able to manage your risk. You want to be able to manage your downfalls. And you want to be able to manage the bad economic times. So you can't lose a lot of money to volatility. And you want to be able to think of defensive strategies. I usually prefer to rebalance my portfolio, to allocate assets. You might want to buy more defensive minded assets like bonds, for example. Like I would usually prefer is to buy more. Remember, in a recession, it is an entry point to purchasing more investments. With cash on hand, it's like an opportunity so that you have investments on sale, you can purchase more. Your eyes should basically light up every time there is a recession, right? It's your opportunity to purchase more. The fourth thing is be able to manage risk as much as you're able to manage returns. Investments, they're not all about returns. You want to be able to manage your risk. You want to be able to manage your downfalls. And you want to be able to manage the bad economic times. So you can't lose a lot of money to volatility. And you want to be able to think of defensive strategies. I usually prefer to rebalance my portfolio, to allocate assets. You might want to buy more defensive minded assets like bonds, for example, like stocks in healthcare industries, things that people need in bad economic times, right? It's always a good idea to manage your risk as much as you're able to manage your returns. The fifth thing is to have a long-term perspective. Recessions, they're temporary, but long-term investments, they're not temporary. Make sure that you have the discipline to stay invested in bad economic times. Find ways where you can weather the storm. You might want to purchase bonds. You might want to purchase income funds so that you can't lose a lot of money. You can balance your investment portfolio in the long run. So as you can see, guys, when it comes to recession proofing your investments, you want to have good diversification. You want to buy quality investments, and you want to have a reasonable amount of cash on hand so that you can take advantage. That's what a recession is. It is sale of investments. It is an opportunity for you to get in at a low price. So make sure you're able to take advantage. Make sure you're able to leverage your investments. By the way, my investments that I usually would do is segregated funds. And with seg funds, your investments are already chosen for you, right? All you have to basically do is to choose the type of investments in recessions so that you can bounce back a lot faster when the economy is performing at its peak performance again. So this concludes my presentation. Feel free to subscribe to my channel. It is free to subscribe. Click the bell notifications. Every time you hear the bells, you will be directed to a new video. So I thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, peace and love. Take care.